Roger, lovely to have you here. A very warm welcome to Glasgow. Have you been to Glasgow before?
I was here 20 years ago.
Aha.
So I think it's changed a bit.
Yeah. What were you doing 20 years ago, if you don't mind me asking?
I was like a college kid, who I came here with friends who actually are American but grew up here. So, and all I remember is there were a lot of drinking in pubs and a lot of people throwing up afterwards.
Very good. That hasn't changed.
That hasn't changed, okay.
But that's so refreshing to hear that you came to Glasgow, because obviously so many people go to Edinburgh and they miss out Glasgow.
Yeah, well, my friends' parents were working here. They're American, and they grew up here. So they're Americans who grew up in Glasgow, so they brought me here.
How marvellous. Well, you've won over the Glaswegians, but this is a very mixed audience here from all over the UK, and also an audience with a lot of exhibitors here too. Hello.
Hello. Listen, some early morning dance music to get us started. We should all get up and move.
Yeah. How do you feel about that, the idea? You know, this is a sort of movers and shakers and influencers and people who are very much about getting films out there to as wide a public as possible.
It's very exciting to talk to. I never get to talk to exhibitors. You know, we're always removed as filmmakers from that part of the process. We never... You know, we go to the theaters and we maybe have contact when we go to do Q&As, but we never get to meet exhibitors.
That's a missing link. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, we'll have about 15, 20 minutes towards the end for you to ask lots of fabulous questions, and I think we'll have a roving mic for that, so you can have those thoughts bubbling away and make direct contact, which would be absolutely lovely. So I was saying, I mean, we'll talk about the film that's coming out next week, Life Animated, but I'm just curious about your journey into film. And as Gillian said, you have a really great background as a respected television filmmaker and journalist. But with me there, and I'm sure with everyone else, there are those moments where, you know, the excitement of film, the possibility of maybe making film, or just the excitement of being a viewer. For me, as I say, coming to this very building was a huge part of it. Was there a moment for you where you, first of all, were just excited by film, and then later on thought, I could maybe do that?
Yeah. Well, I became disillusioned with working for sort of mainstream media, network television news. And I felt that television news in America was becoming way too corporate and way too sort of influenced by making money and advertising. And so, but I went to work for the Sundance Channel, which is a Sundance Film Festival. They have a television channel. And I went to work for them covering the Sundance Film Festival, interviewing the directors who are in competition. And as I would interview those directors, I realized that the real sort of journalism was happening in documentary, and real truth was being told in documentaries, and that they were so inspirational, and they were following their dreams and doing what they want and following their passion. And so I said to myself, someday I'm going to be on the other side of the camera, and I'm going to be at Sundance with a film. And I just quit my job. I was working at CNN. After that, I was freelancing at CNN, and I just quit my job, took every penny I had in the bank, and went to Zimbabwe and made my first film, Music by Prudence.
And did you have people at that point saying to you, you're crazy, you're nuts, just throwing out a potentially lucrative long-term career?
Yeah, I mean, I had been working for 15 years in television, and I, you know, had a decent salary and bought a home and was like, I don't care. For me, it was about following my passion, and I really wanted to do something in Africa, and so I did it. And because I was so passionate about it, it won the Oscar.
I'm sorry, you just have to last it. And then I won the Oscar.
Follow your dreams, you'll win the Oscar or the BAFTA.
Because,
it's so easy.
Yeah, it's so easy. And that was your first short film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just I know it's the cliche, but go on, tell us that moment when they go and the Oscar goes to music. What's it like? Are you kind of like about to faint, or were you very focused?
Well, yeah. Well, it's all out of body, weird experience in that theater there with, you know, sort of Meryl Streep sitting in the front row. But my acceptance speech is very famous because I got Kanye'd. We call Kanye'd. It's now a verb. Which is my ex-producer came and sort of knocked me off the stage, not literally, but sort of pushed me away from the mic.
It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube, and it was the biggest story and one of the top 10 most famous moments of the Academy Awards in history. Right up there with Brando, with the Native American accepting for Brando. And so the next day I was the #1 story in America. So I was all over the media, starting with the morning shows all the way through to the late night shows with David Letterman reenacting it and his monologue. He had a woman dressed, she was wearing a purple top, that came and knocked him off of his monologue and made a speech, and then The Simpsons did an episode about it. So that was the ultimate,
You sure this wasn't a stunt that peer review?
I know, it's
picked
just,
up?
people would have thought it was, I couldn't have asked for better publicity.
And it was, I think you were just about to start making your speech about the importance of it, and then had peer review fallen out or something? That she
had been let go from the project the year before by HBO, because HBO took on the project, and
And she just made a run for that stage?
She made a run. She's a runner.
Everyone's on their phones now looking up.
Everyone will be, I know.
Look at it later if you haven't seen it. No, it's quite a moment. However, I mean, that's great. And you talk about that kind of like wall-to-wall publicity after that. So you then think like Roger, I would be like, whew, people running, here's my card, come for dinner, let's have meetings, we want the next film. But my understanding is that didn't happen.
No, the phone didn't ring. No one, no agents were calling. I thought that would happen, but it didn't happen. And for, it was a struggle to get my next film made. I had to struggle like most documentary filmmakers, applying for grants and raising money and yeah.
What do you think that's about then?
I think it's a number of things. I think that in Hollywood especially, Hollywood is, as we know, is not a very diverse place, with the controversy with Oscar So White. I think that agents tend to sort of represent people who they can identify with, who look like them. And there aren't a lot of agents of color in Hollywood. I'm signed with William Morris, which is one of the biggest agencies now, and I think there's maybe one agent of color in the whole agency.
And that's a big agency.
It's a billion-dollar company.
Yeah.
And also studio executives, there aren't people of color. So they can't sort of identify with me or the type of stories I want to tell, so they're not knocking down my door. So it was, in a way, I had to go out and sort of, raise the money through foundations and to make the films that I wanted. That I want to make.
I just think that's fascinating because yes, you could have won the Oscar, and Peter Capaldi, who's a very well-known guy from this neck of the woods, from quite near here, from Bishop Briggs, and he's our current Doctor Who on television. But he won the Academy Award, didn't he, for his short film? And so his career as a film director didn't explode after that. I mean, you can understand that maybe there are blips in the short films, but the fact that you were in that unusual situation of being on Letterman and everything, you think that something would have happened. So
yeah. It is hard to transition from short films to feature. Yeah. It is a difficult transition, and if you look at all of the people who've won short films, if you look at a list, a lot of them haven't transitioned, or you don't see them sort of directing big features. But that's also the case with the Oscars. The Oscars, what you do with it. You kind of have to use that Oscar and use that as a calling card of momentum, and use that to sort of advance your career. Yeah. And you've got to, and if you just sort of sit on it, a lot of actors have won, and you've never heard from them much again, or they kind of do these sort of not very well-known movies. Yeah. So it's really important what you did. And what I did was I used my Oscar. I went to foundations like the Ford Foundation and places like that, and said, I just won an Oscar. Give me a grant for this film I want to do, which was God Loves Uganda. in Uganda about the LGBT community and the anti-homosexuality bill, which is a death penalty for homosexuals in Uganda. And you know, so foundations then all stepped up and said, okay, we're going to help you make this happen. But it wasn't from traditional funders, television networks, or studios. It was from really human rights organizations.
That's very interesting. We'll come on to talk more about how your films come out there, but there certainly seem to be strands that unite your work, from Music for Prudence, the Ugandan film, and the film we're going to see the trailer for and some clips from Life Animated. Couple of things, the whole idea of you focusing on, well, three things: brilliant stories, really compelling stories, really interesting individuals who we might otherwise not actually really encounter much in life. Prudence, a girl who was born with basically no arms and legs, and just tell us a wee bit about her story.
She has autogryphosis, so her joints were fused together, her legs had to be amputated at birth, her arms one is locked behind her and one in a position in front of her, so she can't use her arms. So she was forgotten. It's considered witchcraft in Zimbabwe and in many parts of Africa to be born disabled. So the mother carries the curse of witchcraft. So the father abandoned Prudence and her mother. Prudence went to live with her grandmother, who took care of her as long as she could, and then couldn't. Her mother then abandoned her, and Prudence ends up living with the father, who had to take her back, with the stepmother and with his new family. Prudence was left on the floor to live like an animal, eat off the floor, live in her own feces, and for years and years and years. She didn't think she was human, she couldn't speak, and then rescued by a school in Zimbabwe, who took her, cleaned her up, put her in a wheelchair, and heard this amazing sound coming from her. And she has this incredible singing voice, but also incredible innate music ability. She forms a band, wins a tour of Europe. I make a film about her, and we get I call the 3 O's. We performed for Obama at the White House, we was on Oprah, and we won the Oscar.
Yes! Yeah! She's a beautiful girl. She's an absolutely beautiful girl, extraordinary voice, and great charisma too. So,
amazing.
We must come up to date with the new film, but with that story, there's the contrast. There's a story that you would never have made for CNN.
No.
So just if you can tell us briefly how you discovered the story. Obviously, you self-funded it. You just go out there and change your life and do it. But how did you come across her story?
Someone told me about her. Someone from Zimbabwe. I was actively looking for stories in Africa. I had never been to Africa. That was my first time going there, hopping on a plane and going to Zimbabwe, which was about to have a very brutal election. So I filmed through the election. Also, journalism was illegal in Zimbabwe at the time, and the New York Times reporter was famously arrested and thrown in jail. And so I had to sneak the cameras into Zimbabwe. It was not easy. Through the whole filming, I had to sneak in cameras. I actually came up with this kind of plan that I met them all in Botswana. All the kids from the school who all have various disabilities hid the cameras underneath their wheelchairs, and no one would touch them, because if you touch a disabled child, they believe you will have a disabled child. So they just waved us through. That's how I got the cameras in.
Do you quite relish that? Do you quite enjoy it?
Of course.
Do you?
It's part of the...
I'm petrified, but
it's scary, but it's part of the... I enjoy the...
Yeah.
You know, the challenge and the danger to get the story out there, because it's such an important story.
Yes. And it's so interesting to hear you talk about you so confidently and enjoying that frisson of danger and everything you're doing, you know, Obama, Oprah, all the rest of it. But growing up, this is the thing about you with these people that you're featuring who are very much outsiders. You felt like an outsider for lots of reasons, didn't you? Your mum was a single parent.
Single mother.
Rejection going on there too.
Single mother, you know, a gay man growing up in the church. My father was a minister in the church who had an affair with my mother. And well documented. I'm not like letting anything out now.
It's not an Oprah moment.
So I was rejected by the church and that community, and always felt that sense of rejection and outsiderness, and I sort of lived in my own fantasy world. I created sort of, a lot like Owen, created characters around me who were my friends and advisors, and I think that helped develop my storytelling ability, but it also made me identify with the plight of the outsider, people like Prudence and Owen whose stories don't get told. When I interviewed Prudence for the first time, she had never told her story, and she was in tears, the crew was in tears, I was in tears. It was amazing. It was this sort of like outpouring of how what it was like for her and how she felt. And that was amazing. And so I learned from Prudence that I always wanted to tell the story of the outsider from their perspective. And so that it was really important that Life Animated is told from the inside looking out, told from Owen's point of view, and that the audience is bought into Owen slowly transformed and bought into Owen's world and Owen's reality. So you're experiencing the world through the eyes of someone living with autism, and you see what a rich and amazing world he inhabits.
It's an extraordinary film which I encourage everybody to see and tell their friends to go and see. So it's out here the weekend after next.
December 9th.
December 9th.
December 9th in the UK.
In the UK, yes. And it's going to be here at the GFT. Lots of dates across the country, and also the Susskind family and Roger are going to be taking part in all sorts of Q&As. So before we talk more, let's just see the trailer. There's a fabulous trailer for the film, so we'll have a little look at that. I know that some of you might have seen the film, but most of you won't.
There is a boy who is just like other boys, until one night he sees from his window a storm on the horizon.
Howie, who are you?
I'm Peter Pan, and you can.
All of a sudden, at 3 years old, Owen vanishes. The doctor says, "Let me explain what autism is." Some of the kids don't ever talk again.
I remember thinking, I'm just gonna hold you so tight and love you so much that whatever is going on will go away.
We're beginning to give up hope. And one day, we're watching the Disney animated movies. And he says he doesn't want to grow up like Mowgli or Peter Pan.
What the hell just happened?
And all of a sudden, it became clear to us. He's using these movies to make sense of the world he actually is living in, our world. So at that point, we began to speak to him in Disney dialogue.
When did you and I become such good friends?
Whatever works to get to Owen.
I've been scared my whole life of growing up. Peter Pan doesn't want to grow up because when you grow up, you lose all your magical childhood times.
My hope is that he is independent enough to be able to grow older on his own.
When I look in the mirror, I see a proud autistic man ready to meet a future that is bright and full of wonder.
He's going to have to fall and fail. We're not afraid of that as we used to be.
I just can't believe how far Owen has come.
The future, I'm still searching for it.
Who decides what a meaningful life is?
It's like I always say, children got to be free to live their own lives.
Powerful stuff. And that's such a key line, isn't it? And I think it unites a lot of your work. Who decides what a meaningful life is?
Exactly.
That is one hell of a line.
Yeah.
From
exactly.
a line, a sentence from that amazing woman, Cornelia, his mum.
Philosophy.
So, yes, a philosophy. God, I mean, that is something I've been thinking about a lot since I saw the film. And the idea of coming across the story of Prudence, somebody told you it, but here, this is remarkable, actually. In a way, I mean, I know there's a heck of a lot of work, but you're on a winner with this family and with Ron and Cornelia, the parents of this boy, because Ron is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and writer, and he had written a book about his boys. So was that your introduction, the book, or did you know Ron before?
I knew Ron because we worked together as journalists at ABC News. Ron was, at the time, this was 15 years ago, I met Ron. Ron was the editor of the Wall Street Journal, and I was a young producer. We just connected, and we did some stories together. And one of the stories we did together was about Ron's wife, Cornelia's parents, and how they met. Her parents met under this famous clock in Grand Central Station, and I sort of talked to couples who met under the clock. And so I knew the family, and I had sort of a connection to them, and Ron had been sort of telling me as he was writing the book, I think this is it. I think we can finally because we wanted to do a film together for a long time. And Ron writes big books. I think he's written like 4 New York Times bestsellers, but on the financial crisis, terrorism, big, huge issues where he embeds himself in the White House and in the administration, very political books. And but he was writing this, and this was such an emotional and difficult book for him to write because it was so personal. And he said, I think that this will make a great documentary. And there was one moment where it just clicked, and I was like, this is it. He's right. And
at that point, had you left CNN? Were you now?
At that point this was after Music by Prudence and God Loves Uganda and lots of other films.
Right.
So I was already pretty established as a filmmaker. And then I called my producer, Julie Goldman. We went to A&E Indie Films, which is the indie film division of A&E's. It's a studio that produces theatrical features, narrative and doc. And they immediately signed on, and we were off and running. So within weeks of sort of connecting with Ron about this, and before the book came out, I was already shooting.
Yeah. So that sounds quite easy, the process of signing up to them. I guess winning the Oscar does help.
Now, somehow now it's kicking in after years, 7 years.
Yeah, is it 7 years? Yes, good Lord. So that long-term relationship, it's that kind of thing of you talking about being the outsider, and in a way you bring all that empathy and identification with characters, which you do with Owen, but also it's like a double whammy. You've got a relationship with the family already, which must have been so important.
It was really important because Ron is an extremely public figure who is a talking head on television, an in-demand commencement speaker, and Cornelia is extremely private.
Yeah.
And she says all the time, we've been on the road together for the last 11 months, and she says all the time that she would never let anyone else make the film because of that relationship that I was able to get such sort of intimacy and access with the family. And
it's there's we don't want to spoil it too much for you seeing it, but it is the most remarkable thing it's called Life, animated, and you see there from the trailer. It's quite a complex film, although beautifully, you bring all the strands together beautifully, but there's great sound and music, and also really important, there's animation at the centre of it too, because the boy is a chip off the old block. It turns out he's a brilliant writer and storyteller himself, young Owen.
He is, and he creates, the last chapter in the book was written by and created by Owen, which is his autobiography, called The Land of the Lost Sidekicks, and it's really about what you saw there briefly, a little boy who gets lost in a storm and ends up in this land of the lost sidekicks, where all the sidekicks of Disney animated films are there, and they are all lost because the heroes have fulfilled their destiny and they're without heroes. And they must fight these monsters that correspond to the challenges that Owen has in his life, like being bullied in school. He creates a villain for that, and they must battle these villains and find their inner hero. And it's a beautiful story, and Owen continues to write it. It's an ongoing story. So we just took that story and we brought it to life. And it was with Owen's drawings and Owen's villains that he created. And to do that, I worked with an amazing animation team out of Paris called McGuff. And 15 young French animators led by Philippe, the owner of MacGuff, who is a character in his own right, and they had done Despicable Me, and he kind of looks like the character in Despicable Me. He probably wouldn't like that, but it's kind of like, and he lived on a boat in the Seine. He's a very eccentric character.
Let's go
and
visit MacGuff.
Yes, yeah, and they just and so we created all these layers, the Land of the Lost Sidekicks. We created these sort of black and white line drawings, which are which I call the backstory animations, which are really like, how do you illustrate something that's happened in the past? So it was a way of illustrating, but it was sort of sketchbook style, like Owen was drawing them himself. And then we have the Disney, obviously the library, the immense library of the 50 Disney classics that we could use and pull from.
And they made that easy for you. That wasn't
It wasn't easy.
Well, but it wasn't
It's Disney.
I know, but it happened, yeah.
It happened. It was a year and a half long process of, it was Disney is a company that's very protective over their intellectual property, and but it happened because I'm on the alumni board now of the Sundance Institute, and trustee on the board of trustees, the big, powerful board, is Sean Bailey, the president of Disney Productions. And so the CEO, Kerry Putnam of Sundance, put us together. And I flew out to Disney and met with him a lot, and then he took this on. He loved the book. He loved this story, and he took this on personally. And if it wasn't for him, it would never have happened. And he put together a room of all the heads of Disney: marketing, legal, animation, all in one room. Many of them had not even met each other. And I took them on a journey through the film. I had started shooting, and I shot Graduation, I shot Disney Club, and I took them on a journey. I was a nervous wreck, and I was shaking. I had these index cards. I had dropped one and lost my place, and I took them on this journey, and by the time I was done, they were all in tears.
Well done.
And yes, and Ron calls it the day I made the lawyers cry.
Yeah, that's an achievement. And the thing is, it's a win-win for Disney, because it's certainly, I mean, the Disney animations, they really feature a lot in the film, because they have to, and it really makes you think again about those stories and the nature of storytelling and archetypes and fables, and just the way everything's like flagged up with the emotions, and why that was so appealing to this boy who was sort of locked in, but totally entranced by the world.
And not only Owen, many kids with autism connect to this because of that reason.
Tell us just about the technical thing. I love this because it's one of the amazing things about the film. You know, the camera's right in front of Owen, and he's actually telling you about what it's like to be locked in and how oppressive the world is. He's talking right at us. This Errol Morris uses this.
It's the Interrotron.
I didn't know. Do you know about the Interrotron? Great word.
Yes, it's a camera invented by Errol Morris, and what it is, it's the simplest description is basically I'm on a television screen and the camera is behind the television screen, so it's filming Owen. So Owen is looking at me, and he's in a sense looking right into the lens, but he's looking at me and I'm in another room. And the reason I did that is because Owen spent his life looking at a television screen. If I wanted to sit Owen down traditional documentary style, he would never be able to make eye contact. He would probably get up and wander away, be bored. But seeing me on a screen, he's just absolutely mesmerized. It worked. I didn't know if it would work. It worked beautifully. He was absolutely mesmerized and just would talk to me and tell his story, and therefore he's looking at the audience directly in the eye, and he's telling his story, and then what I did was I had a little switch, and I would play a Disney clip. I'd ask him some questions, and then I'd play a clip from one of his all-time favorite clips, and then he'd interact with that clip. He'd mouth, he does all the dialogue and knows every word and does all the voices, and he mouths it directly into the camera, so the effect is that you're inside the Disney clip, in a sense, inside his head. And again, I didn't know that would work, and I was like, wow, this is really, it was like it was, in a way, it was an experiment that worked really well.
Yeah, and he's such an engaging guy. I mean, you want to be his friend. You want to meet him.
He's so fun to hang out, and he loves Q&As and interacting with audiences, and if he were here, he would just, he'd have you all in the palm of his hand, and he, often, Owen, we've done so many massive film festival openings with 2,000 people, and Owen, they're all cheering, and Owen's running down, high-fiving people, and takes the stage, and he's like, I feel the love in this room. He knows how to work an audience. He loves it, and he's thriving, and everyone's surprised, including Ron.
Oh, that's wonderful, because there is a key scene towards the end of the film where he does address an audience maybe this size or roughly, and there's a wee moment where you think, is he going to be able to do it? I want to show another clip. You mentioned Disney Club, and maybe just before you run it, just you could explain. So it's a wonderful kind of school he's in. He's in
a school for it's like college really for not just people with autism, but people with challenges and learning disabilities, and and they learn about life and how to become independent. And he starts a Disney Club in this school because he realizes that other people like himself living with autism also identify with these movies, but they don't just watch the movies, they watch scenes and they analyze them and talk about how they apply to their lives.
Yeah.
Jonathan and I first became pals and friends for my 19th birthday weekend when me and my mom and dad went to New York to see Disney's Mary Poppins on Broadway, and he was the Admiral, and my dad wrote him a note and sent it to him, and he called me up on my birthday, and Jonathan is a great friend of mine now.
So what are we gonna do?
We're gonna do several scenes from Aladdin.
We're gonna do a few scenes, yeah.
Yeah?
Ah, sands of time, reveal to me the one who can enter the cave.
That's him! That's the clown we've been waiting for!
You're Iago.
Yep.
And I'm Jafar. You ready?
Ready.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute, Jafar! What if you were the job husband?
What?
Okay. You marry the princess, all right? Then you become the Sultan.
Oh, marry the princess. The idea has merit.
Yes, merit! Gilbert Gottfried! Gilbert Gottfried!
I am so unbelievably surprised.
One more. I can't believe it! I just don't believe it! We're never gonna get a hold of that stupid plan! I hope you aren't doing the lines better than I do.
That's okay.
Yeah, good. That's all I need. Him doing the lines better and working cheaper than I do.
So that's obviously not a regular day at Disney Club.
Yeah,
That was a very
I didn't realize
special
that
day.
was the clip we were watching. That's the last Disney Club before Owen graduates. And that was a surprise where Jonathan invited Gilbert Gottfried to surprise Owen. And that was just an amazing moment. Jonathan has become a great friend of Owen ever since Owen saw him in the cast of Mary Poppins on Broadway and went to the stage door and wrote a letter and say, you've changed my life. You are the voice of Jafar. And Jonathan was really moved by that and called Owen on his 19th birthday. And he told Owen, Owen told him things about the film that he never even thought about, the way he analyzed the film. And they've become great friends. And Jonathan has introduced Owen and the Susskind family to everyone at Disney and really opened the door, and all the voiceover artists, all the animators are now all really good friends with Owen. And there are scenes where we go with Owen, that's not in the film, but we go with Owen, it's in the DVD extras, we go with Owen and and Owen draws with all the classic Disney animators, all the guys who created these classic films who are still around and really out of work because, I mean, they've made enough money, but they're out of work because they don't, it's not hand-drawn anymore. And it's an amazing scene, and they're like, you know, you draw these characters better than we do.
Amazing. And interestingly, as well as treats for Owen coming off the back of all of this, he's giving back now too, because we're talking about the various Q&As you're doing, but the idea of Disney Club, he's doing that, isn't he?
Disney Club is now a national, it's grown, and there's chapters now all across the country. We're doing a Disney Club in London next week with a group of about 50 kids with autism who also connect with Disney Film, and Owen's leading the club. So it's become pretty much a phenomenon.
Yeah, and thinking of this audience that we have here and hearing about your trajectory and the success and all the rest of it, and that initial thing from winning the Oscar, but the phone didn't ring off the hook. How challenging is it still to get the work out there? How are the films seen? What are your modes of distribution? Clearly, brilliantly, this film's about to be screened right across the UK next weekend. But generally, how do you get it out there?
Well, we premiere in a marketplace like Sundance. So this is fully funded by A&E Indie Films. So, A&E funds maybe a couple of films a year. But they, in a big way, they fully fund them. No other, you don't have to think about funding, or you don't have to think about money, really.
That's amazing.
You get to make the film you want to make, and that's a great thing. But, only a few people like Earl Morris work with A&E, and, sort of well-known directors. So that's a good thing. So what we do is we launch the film in a marketplace like Sundance, and then all the distributors come and they bid, and it's crazy. And they I don't know why, but it's always at 2 a.m. where they're maybe that's because you're worn down by 2 a.m. where they're like trying to get you to sign. It's a high pressure situation, and we sell the film, and we made a deal with our distributors, The Orchard, and then the Orchard, I don't know, they do all the work about getting out there and coming up with a distribution plan. We opened in July 1st in theaters across the country.
In the USA.
In the USA, so there's not. I think that for documentaries, sort of theatrical, the old kind of plan where you could open in theaters and people would go to theaters and you would make lots of money, that is sort of, those days I think are gone because of streaming and the Netflix and the Amazons of the world. And so but we still hold on to that because I want people to go to the theater and experience the film. The film is meant, I shot the film, everything I did was to project it and to have a shared experience. So we spend a lot of time at festivals. I can't tell you how many festivals all over the world and all around the country we go and we screen, and that's where we get the joy of people experiencing in a theater, because we will screen. We've been the opening night for many, many, many film festivals. We've won like 10 or so audience awards, and you can have 1,500 people in a theater experiencing. There's nothing like that.
Yeah.
But in the theater, when we open in theaters, except for the opening weekend in New York maybe, and in LA, and in people just aren't going to the theaters, so it's a problem, and I think that where we end up doing the most sort of traffic ends up being our SVOD deals. So it ends up being our deal with iTunes and with Amazon and Netflix of the world, because it's just too convenient, so people just want to just watch it on their computer, which is sad to me. And a lot of people seen Life Animated on airlines. We did a lot of deals with airlines, with KLM and Delta, and it's a lot of people come up to me and said, "Oh, I saw it on the airplane." And someone the other day put on Facebook that they were sitting, a filmmaker was sitting on a plane, and there's two people sitting next to him were both watching Life Animated. So he snapped a picture and posted it. Yeah.
Well, I think obviously the whole SVOD, all these platforms are now a fact of life. I guess it just has to be accepted. But on the other hand, there you are, you sort of like a rock star or something, on the road for a year talking about this film,
yes.
And the family very much doing their bit. I mean, it's a labour of love, but all of that must do its bit in terms of word of mouth. And even you referred to the DVD. So the DVD, when would the DVD for this?
The DVD is already released in America, right in time for Christmas. It's a big DVD release because it's a thing that families, especially families that have children or connection to people with autism, want to give as gifts and share and send to people. So that's really, really great. The DVD release here will be 4 months after the theatrical. So it'll be 4 months from December.
Yeah, and like with the Prudence film, I mean, with the DVD sales, were those pretty good after, especially with all the post-Oscar publicity?
Yeah, that's where I made most of my money back that I took all out of the bank and went bankrupt to make, but I didn't. But I was from DVD sales. But I would, back in the days of Prudence, it's a short. It's 40 minutes. So a lot of Netflix wasn't doing shorts. Netflix has just gotten into the shorts business.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of places you could see it on HBO Go for a while after that, and then after it was gone from there. So I would go to festivals and I'd set up a little card table and I would bring a suitcase of DVDs and I would sell my DVDs at the festival. That's how I would make money, as I would sell DVDs at a table after people would see the film. And I went to a lot of disability conferences and festivals and just sold my DVDs. I was like a traveling salesman. Yeah,
it's fine. As I say, the genie's out of the bottle with the subscription video on demand services and all the various formats. I wasn't here for the MUBI VP's opening speech yesterday, but looking at it online last night, I believe he was talking about, as well as doing the 30 pieces of content and one shoves off the end and you get a new one that day, but also sort of cherishing the cinema experience too. Ideally, it would be great to have that kind of balance where you can maybe lure people on, kids who are only looking online, somehow trick them into going to the cinema as well.
I know. The place we have been successful with Life Animated in theaters is because there is an audience there is a huge community of people with autism and organizations, and they would rent out whole theaters for organizations like Autism Speaks and different organizations, and also we had a great luck with the Regal Cinema, who did autism friendly screenings in like 50, 100 theaters all across America on one day at one time. That's a sort of a shared autism-friendly screening where the lights are up, people can run around and feel comfortable experiencing the film. Yeah. So we have had great success with that, and with sort of our outreach and engagement around the community, and with with Disney. Disney has helped as much as they could. It was important to them that this is an independent film, and this isn't a Disney production, and that I'm an independent filmmaker.
Apart from anything else, we've got Owen as a young man growing up, so there's a whole interesting area there where he's lovely brother who so adores him and is looking out for him. It's kind of like he's trying to help him with growing up and relationships and sex. So I mean, you don't go there with Disney, so I can imagine
no.
Yeah, so
no. When we say in the film, life is not a Disney movie, and Owen has to deal with things beyond that, which is his brother helps him to understand, what beyond a Disney kiss, what a French kiss is, and it's a funny scene. Yeah. And But Disney was fine with that. They didn't want this to be a love letter to Disney. They were like, you need to tell the truth and you need to make the film. And they didn't see it till it was a rough cut, and we were really nervous that they would be, especially around the sex stuff.
Yes.
The big moment with the brother. I don't know. I wouldn't give that away.
Yeah.
Okay. So they were like, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So
It just sounds like, we'll open up in just a moment, but just the idea of this being, it's a very labour-intensive process for you to spread the word and get out there. And I imagine just that, the idea of meeting the individual cinema managers and all the people, those folk, and interesting to talk about autism friendly, and more cinemas are doing that, building that into their monthly programmes. I just wonder, in this kind of digital, virtual world, how important talking and meeting people is in terms of just getting the film out there.
It's essential. And, as the film festival circuit has been really amazing, because we would meet, theater owners, distributors, we'd meet people in education. We just did theaters all across the city of Houston, Texas, where the entire school district went to see Life Animated on one day. And we're doing that in a number of cities now in the country, and that was sort of a coming together of like distributors and the autism community and the school district.
Yeah. That's painstaking stuff. That's
a lot of painstaking stuff. It's a lot of. We have a lot of help. We have an outreach team that does work in the communities, in the autism community, reaching out to the Disney community also, and bringing those two together. There's many Disney blogs and magazines and fan clubs, a huge, obviously a huge Disney audience, and so it's engaging all these audiences, and it's a lot of groundwork, it's just like grassroots groundwork, and we have a team in the U.S. called 360, and they just are every city we open in America, they reach out to all the local autism organizations, and they just rally them all to the theater. But it's a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah. The good thing is, one imagines a film like this and your work will live on. Just thinking about the money side of things, that you will continue to have sales, because the films speak to people, and it's not like you're making a feature film with Meryl Streep and you just go next. I've done that. It's not like you can separate your life and your work.
No.
The Suskind's families' lives have been changed hugely because of the film. So it's like an ongoing relationship.
It's an ongoing, and we continue to sell. Well, no, actually, we're sold out. Apparently, I just told by our distributor that we're sold out in the world, the entire world. So we've sold the film to every market that we could sell to. So we're sold out. So yes, which means I get to go and travel and do fun things like travel the UK with the Suskind family, and then we're doing a big theatrical release in Japan in theaters, in 85 theaters all over Japan, and we're going to tour Japan, and I've just done New Zealand and Australia and and Hong Kong and Taiwan. I could spend the next, I could spend 2 years basically traveling the world, but I have to make I want to make other films and move
okay.
on. So.
Well, who wants to ask a question?
Fabulous film, thank you. I saw it, it ripped my heart out, left it on the floor, very powerful. But also, I wanted to ask about the edit, because you seem to do something very clever, that every moment that I thought my heart was going to break, you then introduce some humour.
Yes.
So you must have thought about that arc very carefully to stop us all flowing away with tears.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a very, very, very brilliant editor named David Teague, who has edited a number of Oscar-winning and nominated films, who is a genius. And this is a very layered film, because there's so many layers to it, because we have the verite current day story, we have the 3 different types of animation: Disney animation, the Land of the Lost Sidekicks, and the backstory animation. And when we have home movies, so it's sort of cutting between all these different layers. It's also and for me, it's always about sort of peaks and valleys, and this sort of getting that flow right. between one moment you're crying. To me, if you want to have a real cinematic journey, you need to laugh and you need to be crying the next minute. And that is really important. So we spent a year editing this film and getting that right. And there were many mishaps and many, trials and errors, but just getting that flow right, to flow into the past sort of organically and then go back to the present is very, very, very difficult. And to tell a story that way. And we had the luxury of time. We had the luxury of time and resources to do that.
I come from a family which had I had a special needs sister. And one of the things that characterizes families like that is the loneliness of how to deal with it. So I think that getting this film out into cinemas, into audiences of parents with kids of one variety of special needs or another, is crucially important so that they can exchange horror stories, they can exchange happy stories and so forth. But the other thing I wanted to say is that we had a wonderful documentary tradition in this country with people, organisations like the Post Office Film Unit, with people like John Grierson, Good Scott and Humphrey Jennings. Grierson later went on to found the National Film Board in Canada. Is it possible to survive in the documentary world without a large element of public subsidy?
Well, we don't get public subsidy in the U.S. There isn't funding for the arts in the U.S., so we have to rely on foundations, and right now it's gonna get much worse. So the little bit of money that went to public television, and that's under the new. I call it the T word.
I know, me too.
We don't really say. I don't really say it. That will be completely wiped out, and we have to rely now on. And because of that, taking up the slack, both fortunately and unfortunately, are companies like Netflix, which are putting incredible amounts of money and resources into documentary specifically, and no one can compete with the amount of money that they have for not just for making films but for advertising, and it's an unlevel playing field now, because they're like sort of the big guys in the room who just can put millions into campaigns around a film and billboards and in glossy inserts, but as far as funding, public funding, it's really pretty much doesn't exist anymore.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking here in Glasgow.
Sure.
My question is, you've said a bit about Disney and what that took, but you didn't say. I wonder if you could say a bit about A&E and what that took, since the industry, sadly, is littered with the bodies of people who've not got what they wanted from their funders. So would you be willing to say a little bit about A&E?
Yeah. A&E was a absolute dream to work with. I mean, Molly Thompson, who's the head of A&E Indie Films, who's a well-regarded figure on the documentary scene in the U.S. I went to her, and within 24 hours, she greenlit the film, and I just had all the resources. It's a little overwhelming to have everything. There's so few people, filmmakers, that get to that sort of opportunity to make sort of a film that you want to make with the resources to make it, and A&E allows that to happen. That's their model, and they were really a dream to work with. They didn't even see anything till we got to the sort of first rough cut stage. They worked with me. They gave notes, but it was really, they really stuck to my vision. They wanted to me to sort of realize my own vision, and they wanted to make that happen. And
you're spoiled now. It's going to be difficult to.
I'm totally spoiled. I'm totally spoiled. Yeah. So now I can only, I've been toying with and in discussions with doing a narrative film with various studios in Hollywood and stuff, which I don't know what that's going to be like. That's going to be an interesting process.
That will be interesting. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Hi, it was really interesting to hear you speak. Actually really made me think about a story that I'm quite keen to share and to produce and to make into a film. And I was just wondering what your kind of usual process is. Do you kind of go and write a narrative, or once you hear about somebody's story, or do you kind of just go in with a loose idea and then go to a distributor and start shooting?
Yeah. Well, if I have an idea, I will. I don't usually write out write out a whole script for it, because it's a documentary and things are going to happen and change, and also, but I try to think through sort of an outline of what I think the film might be. And I did not do that so much with my last film, God Loves Uganda. I just went and just shot everything that moved, which was crazy because I came out with 1,000 hours of footage. I was overwhelmed, swimming in footage. It was kind of a huge disaster, really, because what saved me is that I went to the Sundance Story and Edit Lab with 8 of the best editors in the world, all helping me save my film and come up with a working structure, and overwhelmed by the amount of footage that I had shot. And I went in there with hours, I put a 2.5 hour rough cut of the film that had 10 million storylines, and they helped me to really focus it. So when I went into Life Animated, I was like, this is not going to happen again, and this is experience. And I really thought through the story and how I wanted to tell the story, and I really talked to the Suskines and sort of figured out. They started to reveal, oh well, Owen's going to be graduating. Oh well, Owen's going to he's going to be moving into his own. I'm like, wait a minute. There's all this stuff is about to happen. There's a whole story here. This is the way to do it. Because I had this book, and I could have just cut down the book and done some interviews and been done with it. And so I went away and I spent weeks just sort of on my own with the book and thinking about it and really sort of thinking out how the film would look. And it turned out pretty close to the way I imagined it, with some twists and turns on the way. But I think you really want to think through the film you want to make, but don't overly script it. I was just on a panel with Werner Herzog, who said, a treatment is a lie. In very Werner Herzog way.
You've got to do the voice.
Yes, I know. I was going to do the voice, and I thought better of it.
I think we've got time for one final question from the lady who's got her hand raised up there at the back.
Hi, just wanted to see if you could maybe just say a bit more about the outreach team that you mentioned earlier to do with the film. I think there is an opportunity, especially in Scotland, to make more of a direct connection between the filmmaker and participants in a film with audiences. And it'd be great to hear your experience of that.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of experience with outreach and engagement because my last film, God Loves Uganda, was a huge campaign around the outreach of engagement. And there's a lot of organizations in the U.S. that just give grants just for that. And my funders, the Ford Foundation of that film, gave me a special grant for that. And I put together an outreach and engagement team and engaged a social media team to really build partnerships with organizations. And with my last film especially, I started building that audience before I even started shooting the film. So with God Loves Uganda, I went to Washington, I went to the State Department, met with that time Secretary Clinton's team around issues they were doing in Uganda. They connected me to organizations like Open Society Foundation and various organizations that were doing work on the ground in Uganda. I went to them all. I came up with an outreach and engagement plan, a very extensive plan, and they all gave me money and grants to execute that, and took that film on a tour of Africa, and funded by Ford and OSF, and then engaged with the faith community in America and screened at 1,000 churches and across the country. So that was a very, very big effort. And around Life Animated, the team, we have an outreach and engagement producer that's her sole job, is to connect to communities. And I think you need a dedicated producer just for that, because it's such a big job. And then the distributor hires companies that, like the company I mentioned earlier called 360, that engages with communities, and they're working with the outreach producer. She's kind of big picture. They're working in each market that the film is opening. And it's all these people, I just can't even get my head around all the stuff that is going on around it, because I'm, usually on stages like this and doing talks and doing Q&As, while there's this whole team, and a lot of times they do so many of community engaged screenings in theaters and stuff that I don't even know half of them what's going on. I'll go on the website and I'll be like, wow, all these screenings are going on with these organizations. So it's a big effort, but I think a dedicated producer, there are people now, especially in the US, that's just producers that just specialize in outreach and engagement in communities, and that's become pretty essential to the release of a film, because you have to build the film is not going to work unless you build your audience, and you need to start building your audience really early on.
Great. Great final question. Thank you very much. Fantastic answer. Roger, thank you so much for your very generous time. Brilliant answers from you. Just so much food for thought.
Thank you,
Gillian's
guys.
going to say a few final words, but before that, let's give a huge round of applause for Roger.
Thank you.